Hello, hunting family. Welcome to a special two-part series on tracks and tackle, brought to you by Menser Outdoors. I'm your host, the Arrow Eagle, and joining me is my co-host, the Hollywood Horse. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most thrilling and mysterious seasons in the hunting world, the rut. In part one, we'll explore what the rut is, why it matters to hunters and conservation efforts, and what makes it such an exciting and challenging time to be in the great outdoors. So, grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let's embark on this journey into the heart of the rut. Are you ready? Let's get started. All right, hey, what is up, hunting family? This is the Arrow Eagle, and you are in for another episode of Tracks and Tackle. I am here, and today's exciting episode, we're going to be talking about something that I know that all us whitetail deer hunters love. We're going to be discussing the rut. Basically, we want to bring an understanding of the rut, what it means from many different perspectives, certainly from the hunting perspective and what it means to us hunters, and additionally what it means to wildlife and conservation efforts. So overall, the rut, it holds different significances for hunters and deer population. For hunters, it represents a thrilling and productive hunting experience. And for the deer population, it's a critical period for reproduction, natural selection, and survival. So understanding these contrasting viewpoints is essential for a holistic perspective on the role of the rut within nature. So, just to tag in here and talk about this a little bit from the hunting perspective, being a hunter that loves this type of time of year, from the hunter's perspective, it's prime hunting opportunity. The rut's often considered one of the most exciting and prime hunting periods of the year, and it's the time of year when deer, especially those big bucks, become more active and less cautious and more focused on mating, so they're not paying attention to us hunters out in the woods. And increased activity like this makes it easier for hunters to spot and pursue these deer, increasing our chances of a successful hunt. So that's why we love the rut, because it's more activity and it's easier for us to accomplish the goal of harvesting that big buck. And I'd say probably the second point from the hunter's perspective is that trophy buck potential. The rut is a time when those dominant bucks are on the move. They're seeking out does and estrus, and it provides us with better opportunities to target and harvest the trophy bucks that might otherwise remain hidden or cautious during other times of the year. I know they are up on their feet and they are moving, and they're thinking about one thing, and it's not worried about a hunter in a tree stand or a blind or anything like that. So, and also, during the rut, you get to use different types of hunting tactics. Hunters get to employ rut-specific tactics like rattling, calling, scent lures to mimic the behaviors of dominant bucks. These strategies can highly be effective, and during the rut especially, you can get yourself a lot more activity, get those deer coming in close, and it's adding an extra layer of excitement to the hunt. So, but the last thing, and I think one of the most important things, is hunting the rut for us is that camaraderie and tradition. Everybody loves hunting camp, and I know that we love being at hunting camp with our hunting family. The rut often brings us together in that shared excitement. So it's a camp's all abuzz with anticipation and the camaraderie among fellow hunters. It's at its peak during the rut, and hunting the rut with friends is, there's nothing greater, right? So many hunting traditions and rituals are associated with the rut, making it a special time for hunters to bond. And I know for us, we love to get together that time of year and go to the cabin and spend some days just out in the woods together as men hunting the rut. So with me, I want to introduce my co-host, the Hollywood Horse, and he's going to tell us just a little bit more about the significance of what the rut means.
Yeah, Air Eagle, I couldn't agree with you more with your previous statements, especially the camaraderie. It's always a blast to get out here with a buddy, out here with your family, or those close to you and just make some memories. Um, but yeah, the rut, it's something else. It's crazy. As a whitetail hunter, I grew up in South Central PA ever since I could walk. I remember, being in the woods with my father who mentored me, and I remember being surrounded by those. I wouldn't call myself a rut expert, but I've been hunting it probably close to a decade now, and just hearing tales from others that have also been experienced to it. So just kind of learning,
Yeah, you
you
like
know.
the rest of us. You've been hunting the rut as long as you've been allowed to hunt it, though.
Right, right. Right, but as iron sharpens iron, a
Mm-hmm.
man sharpens another man. So just learning from others. But I think a big point is we need to take a step back. We know how we think, but think how the deer think. Look at their viewpoint. But from the deer's perspective, it's so important for them, for their population. It's a crucial period for their reproduction, and it ensures the survival and the growth of their species. It's a time where the does come in estrus, which puts out the scent to let the bucks know that it's on. It's mating season. Successful reproduction during the rut is so essential for sustaining the deer population. Another big point is the competition and natural selection, survival of the fittest.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest of the bucks have their way and they pass on their genes, while the youngers take up the beating and not so lucky as to passing their genes. The strongest and the fittest bucks will carry their way and pass it on to the next generation.
Have you ever been able to witness, bucks get into it where they start scrapping in the woods? Because not everybody's got that opportunity to see that, but I have, and it is amazing,
Yeah, I'm sure you get the camera out because no one's gonna believe you, right?
right?
Um, but yeah, with that competition and the battling going, there's a lot of stress and energy expenditure that goes with it. It can be physically and emotionally taxing on those deer. The bucks could lose a significant amount of body weight due to the extra energy they're going to expend to ensure a successful mating season, and with seeking those mates and also defending their territory. They don't want to give up what's theirs. So does also could experience that as well because they're getting chased around by multiple suitors. Um, the stress just in general just affects the deer's health and their rate of survival. Um, Last topic I really want to touch on is behavioral changes. So with the rut, the deer behavior changes significantly. When the hormones are in the air, everybody acts differently.
Yeah, not true.
Um, so bucks become more active, especially during daylight hours, versus previous. As we know, they like to come out during dawn and right before daybreak. So they like to come out and expend more energy and just be out there for their mates to see. So they expend more energy and they have more aggressive behavior. Does may be more exclusive as they seek for the suitable mate. They have a choice in it, but obviously, if there's a bigger buck, he's going to make the choice for her. But these behavioral changes can impact deer movement patterns and their accessibility to predation. So, the coyotes and other natural predators that are out there looking for a bite to eat, they're going to be easier to chase down a buck that's stressed out and low on energy. But in summary, the rut just holds a major significance for hunters and the deer population, as we touched on here. Hunters, it's a thrill, it's a blast because there's gonna be more activity. The deer are gonna be moving through the woods, and you're more likely to have a productive hunting season. While on the other end, for the deer population, it's crucial for their reproduction, natural selection, and survival. Understanding these contrasting viewpoints is essential for a holistic perspective on the role of the rut and the natural world.
Yeah, yeah, it's totally true. So, like, for those of us that understand the rut, we all have our perspective, I guess, on what it is, what it means to us, and how it impacts the hunt. Certainly, my favorite time of year, and for many hunters, I think that it's the same. But I'd say the rut itself, it's fascinating, and to explain exactly what it is, it's a critical phase of the life of the white-tailed deer. It refers to the breeding season. When we say the rut, we mean it is the white-tailed deer breeding season, and it involves a series of complex behavioral and physiological changes in both bucks, which are the male deer, and does that are the female deers. And the rut typically occurs during the fall and varies in timing depending on geographical location, local environment, different conditions, those type of things. So we want to break down what actually happens during the rut. So that's where we're going to go through here. One, with deer, they're you mentioned it before, the hormonal changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
The rut's primarily triggering the hormonal changes in the white-tailed deer, and this is what creates the activity. As daylight hours shorten and temperatures drop in the fall, it's the pineal gland in the buck's brain. It detects the environmental cues. And so this, in turn, it triggers the production and release of hormones, that particularly the testosterone, into the bloodstream. And this is what gets the bucks moving. And who doesn't like to see a big buck rolling, up through your by your tree stand, right?
Right.
So it starts this increased activity as the testosterone levels rise. Bucks become more active. They exhibit rut-related behaviors, and what we mean by that is they're on a mission to find receptive does for mating. And during this phase, bucks often are seen moving during daylight hours, which makes them more visible to hunters. And that is why, specifically archery hunters, I like to get out and hunt the rut with a bow and arrow, because I've got a better chance of a big buck coming in through the corridors that I'm hunting and coming close enough that I have an opportunity to harvest it with a bow and arrow. Additionally, territorial markings. Bucks will engage in territorial behaviors such as scraping and rubbing. We were just out doing some scouting today, and we were looking for these scrapes and these rubs. Scrapes, what they are areas of the ground where the buck uses its hooves to clear away leaves and expose the soil, and then they urinate in these scrapes, leaving behind scent markings. And it's kind of like a dog, how it would mark its territory. Bucks will do that as well. And bucks will, in addition to that, they'll rub their antlers on trees, and they'll mark their territory to establish dominance. So this is something we see in the animal kingdom. And one buck will mark a tree or mark a scrape, but the next buck will come up through and it might try to cover that. And this is one of the things it goes along with establishing dominance, but it's all contributed to seeking and courting these does, right? So the primary goal of the buck during the rut is to locate those does that are in estrus, meaning when we say the does being in estrus, that they're ready to mate. And bucks are often going to follow the scent trails left by does because they're putting off pheromones as well. When they find that receptive female, they're going to court her by following her closely and engaging her in various behaviors to encourage her to stand still for mating, because that's what is on his brain, right? So a couple of different things that we see changing during the rut are the vocalizations of these deer. So both buck and doe use vocalizations during the rut. Bucks may emit different types of grunts and groans to communicate with other deer and establish their presence. Does and estrus may vocalize just to attract bucks, saying, "Hey, big boy, I'm ready to breed."
Come on to the dance floor.
That's right. I'm ready to dance. But because does will do that when there's multiple bucks in the area, you've got this competition, right? Where the does are during the rut, you're going to find bucks. And the rut's highly competitive. Dominant mature bucks are often going to compete with younger or less dominant bucks for access to those receptive does. These competitions can sometimes lead to confrontations and fights among bucks. I saw one I don't think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago. I was in my stand and I saw there's one doe coming through, and I was in my stand. I had these two different bucks, and they were scrapping with one another, trying to, establish dominance with each other and who's going to be trailing her and courting her. And I was watching them because it was a sight, but then out of nowhere, there was a third buck showed up, and I think he was bigger than both of those two that were scrapping, because they got out of dodge, and that big buck came in, and I never got a shot at him, but it was a really cool sight to see how those other two that were fighting for competition, they got out of the way when that real dominant one, showed up on the scene.
Wow, yeah, pretty interesting. I think a big point to bring up to our listeners here is how interesting it is that prior to the rut, through the summer and through the spring, everybody's friends with everybody. You know, you'll see pictures, doe, buck, everybody together. Bucks will be riding together. But as we get closer and closer to the rut, the light switch flips, and hey, we're not buddies anymore. We're competing against each other.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know you, you don't know me, and it turns into a big competition between all of them.
Yeah, it's
Because
competition time. They go from these bachelor groups where they're running together, and several different groups to, the strongest and who's going to be the apex, the big dog in the barnyard. So, yeah, that's actually a great point. But it all comes down to mating, right? When the buck successfully courts the doe, mating occurs. And this is the whole point when we say, and we're talking about the rut. It's typically involves a brief and vigorous interaction. Mating can occur multiple times during the rut. As does, they will have multiple estrus cycles. And then, once successful mating happens, pregnancy occurs. The does undergo a gestation period of about 6.5 months. And this means that fawns are typically going to be born in late spring or early summer, ensuring that they got a better chance of survival due to the availability of food and milder weather. And I know we've been watching our trail cameras, and we love to see those younger fawns and new yearlings on the trail cams, because that's new life, and it's part of the reproductive system from a whitetail perspective. So, just to recap the rut, it's a captivating and dynamic period within the life of a white-tailed deer. It impacts their behavior, their physiology, the interactions with their environment. It's a time of intense activity and competition among bucks. It plays a critical role in sustaining and regulating deer populations in their natural habitats. And for hunters, the rut is often the most exciting and productive time for deer hunting.
I know it's exciting for me.
I know, who doesn't love hunting the rut,
Right.
so which is why we're doing this episode, because we know that it's on its way, and we felt it was appropriate to have an episode where we talk about it. So we're all anticipating that increased deer movement and visibility when we're in our tree stands.
Yeah, I think it's great that we kind of took a step back and established a baseline here of what the rut is and things to look for. Um, while going forward, you can look at, when is the rut? When does it come in? What more is there too about the rut? And a big thing is the timing and the phases. As we talked about earlier, when the rut's not in, everybody's buddies and everybody gets along, and then it seems like they go their separate ways. The does will run with packs, while the bucks will separate from each other to ensure their success. Rut breaks down into 3 phases. This is something that I learned recently when I was doing my research. Is there's the pre-rut, peak rut, and post-rut, and it breaks down to the environmental factors and the geography, such as the seasons. I know here in Pennsylvania, rut typically runs towards the end of October, early November, while if it's a warmer summer and it runs into the winter, rut can often at times run into rifle season, which can make some excitement because rifle here is only 2 weeks long. But breaking it down, so pre-rut, it typically occurs in late summer to early autumn, and it often begins as early as August, and it can extend into September. But the exact timing varies on the latitude and the location with the environmental conditions. Peak rut phase, on the other end, it's often referred to as the rutting period, and it occurs a few weeks after the pre-rut phase. Often, which most hunters struggle with, is the timing, is figuring out, hey, when is the peak rut, because that's when we want to get out there and hunt, because that's when the deer are going to be the most active. While in most regions, this falls in late October to early November, but the exact timing can be variable due to factors, as I mentioned earlier, about the latitude and the climate. While lastly, the post-rut phase, it typically follows peak rut, and it ends late November, early December, again depending on the location and local conditions. So understanding these phases are crucial, as I touched on earlier. You want to get out in the woods at the peak rut phase, so depending where you're at, look towards end of October, early November, and this can help you with your success, and it's a great to incorporate in your tool bag for your hunting strategies during the future as the deer are more active.
Yeah, yeah, that's like sort of a recap on what the rut is. While you're at it, why don't you just let's get into rut behavior and strategies, talking about like the pre-rut, the peak rut, and the post-rut, breaking it down into those three segments. What are the bucks doing? And then maybe I can touch on what the does are doing in those time frames.
Yeah, so as we mentioned a little earlier, is the bucks, they're going to be more active. They want to establish their territory. They're going to be scraping, rubbing, moving around, letting the does know they're in the area. They're seeking out does actively. They're on a mission. They're looking to have some success in the breeding season. So during the pre-rut, males buck, they're going to start to have an increase in testosterone. They're going to want to establish their dominance, their hierarchy, and mark their territories through their area. Let them know, like, this is mine. Back off, bro. So bucks more frequently will be active in the daylight, making appearances as does are getting closer and closer to their estrus cycles. While during the peak rut, that's when the bucks are going to be the most active, as the hormones are going to be at their peak.
Full swing.
Yep, it's go time. So they're going to cover greater distances. They're going to do more. They're going to go out of their way more and show some more aggressive behavior. And so this might be, Ron, you touched on earlier, seeing it. This might be when you're seeing the chasing, the fighting, and more of the vocalization as they're establishing their dominance and their access to receptive does. While towards the very end of the rut, they're going to lose interest in mating. Testosterones are going to level off, go back to neutral, back to their normal values, and they're going to enter the phase of recovery. So all that energy they expended, they're going to work to recover. So they're going to be more dormant and less active and focus more on seeking food and resting up. So that's basically what they do through the rut, the bucks, as I explained. But Ron, if you want to touch on the does here.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because understanding these animals helps us in our pursuit of them, right? And so does ultimately during the rut they're becoming more receptive, and so let's talk about how they're choosing mates, right? In the pre-rut stage, the does, so they're not yet in estrus during the pre-rut stage, but they may be showing signs of increased interest in bucks. Some does may exhibit mild estrus behaviors, but they're not just ready to mate in the pre-rut early season. But when that peak rut time happens, does go into that, like we said, it's full swing go time, and their estrus peaks during this peak rut phase. They're going to become very receptive to mating, and they're emitting these pheromones and vocalizations to attract bucks to them. So multiple bucks are going to come in and get the attention of maybe a single doe, like I shared in that story briefly. You had one doe cruising the mountain, and there were three bucks right there on her. So that's peak rut activity and doe behavior during that. Post rut, does that didn't conceive during the peak rut could potentially come into estrus again during the post-rut phase, because it's just the way that nature is, right? We're meant to reproduce, and we were created to do that. So they could potentially come into estrus again during the post-rut phase. Some does may exhibit late estrus behavior, but that's how the does are gonna react, during these times, And so as far as like understanding that, we can strategize our hunt based on pre-rut season. It changes during the peak, and again, we have to maybe adapt during the post-rut. So why don't you just touch on hunting strategies for us real quick before we go into the next segment?
So yeah, I'd love to touch on some hunting strategies. What I found to be effective, as archery extends a little bit more into the rut, while firearm catches the late rut season, it's better to catch it earlier, as they say, better late than never. So it's better to get out while it's early. You can catch the peak rut in the end of October. But it's important to do some scouting, look for those rubs, look for those scrapes. Make sure you're setting up your stands in areas where there's high traffic, and using calls and scents to attract the attention of alpha buck that's in the area and wants to snoop on by you. So the pre-rut is exciting for hunters, as we're able to get out there and catch those bucks that are more eager. This is when you want to incorporate some rattling, some grunting, use some scents such as doe and estrus. This will imitate the behavior of a dominant buck, and it can bring them in to be effective during this early phase. While peak rut, it's very prime. This is when you want to be out there. As we mentioned earlier, the deer are more active, less cautious. This is when, they might come snooping by your stand before you even know it. My personal experience, I know checking our trail cameras constantly, and then rut comes around, you'll see some bucks that you didn't even know are around the area. They'll come trotting in. So where the does are, the bucks will be shortly there following.
Yeah.
But as it gets closer and closer to the post rut, when the rut's over, hunting becomes more and more challenging because the bucks become dormant and transition more on their central survival and travel less and becoming more focused on their rest and sourcing local food sources. So that's just some of my hunting strategies. I don't know if there's any others ones that you would throw in there, Ron, but that's what I found to be successful for me.
Yeah, no, I think that the key is just understanding the different phases. There's hunting and depending on where you hunt, what state you hunt, and when your hunting seasons begin. It's completely different hunting in late September to early November, and even, through the winter months, December, January, it's completely different. And so just understanding, as hunters, we want to pattern these deer and we want to try to understand them so that we can harvest them, and we want to be in the right place at the right time. So all great points that you made there. Thank you for tuning in to part 1 of our in-depth exploration of the rut on Tracks and Tackle, presented by Menser Outdoors. We hope you've enjoyed delving into the science and significance of this captivating season with us. But on our rut journey, it does not end here. In part 2, we're going to even deeper into the rut mysteries, discussing hunting strategies, debunking myths, and sharing some incredible stories from the field. So be sure to stay tuned for the next episode. Until then, stay safe and keep those outdoor adventures alive.